Hello students, today we are going to talk about information processing as to how information is processed or how we take information, how we try to memorize and how we try to remember that while preparing for our exams, or it could be anything. For example, if you look at a girl in the slide, she is sitting in front of the books and she is trying to see whether how she will be able to remember or how she will be able to read all through, whether she will be able to complete it or not, or how she will process the information or how she will take in the information. So keeping these things in mind, let's see what information processing is all about. Information processing includes short-term memory, long-term memory, rehearsal strategies, how we organize information and how information we take and how information which we try to forget in seconds can be stored in a long-term memory, how we use mnemonic devices. So let's look at each one separately. Coming to the first one, rehearsal. Rehearsal is an event that occurs as preparation for a performance. Many a times we have realized, or when we have any other program or for any other preparing for any exams or any lectures, we try to rehearse it before actually going on to the stage or actually giving an exam. We prepare as to how we need to write an exam or how to give a lecture in front of the audience. So we try to prepare it in front of the mirror, or we try to prepare it by giving it in front of our brothers or sisters, or it could be a friend. So we try to rehearse the information, and rehearsal is nothing but repetition of a particular information over and over again. And there's a concept known as rote learning. Rote learning is nothing but repeating of information over and over again without getting any meaning of it. It's just like you mug up for the exam, the next day you forget it. In the same way, rote learning is nothing but learning, but it won't stay for a very long time. And in rote learning, there's something known as rote rehearsal. Rote rehearsal is similar to rote learning. Rehearsal means you rehearse more lines or more concepts you rehearse, but it just stays only for a short period of time, but it's not stored in a very long time. Maybe you rehearse it, but after a couple of minutes, that information is gone. Coming to what exactly rehearsal strategies are. Rehearsal strategies, while preparing for a lecture or for an exam, we try to rehearse the information over and over again. So when we try to repeat the information over and over, how do we actually rehearse that information? Do we use a particular strategy? For example, a football player trying to hit a ball, how will you do it? Actually try to think that I have to hit the ball only at the center or to the left or to the right. It could be any way. So there he tries to apply a strategy seeing the opponent who is standing at the goal post. So based on that, towards the end of hitting the ball, he might change his strategy by thinking that instead of left, he might change it to right, or instead of right, it could be left, or it could be center. So similarly, even while preparing for our exams or giving a lecture, we try to use a particular strategy as to how we rehearse the information. And various strategies in rehearsal learning, some of them could be like repeating information to learn. Foundation information is necessary to learn before more complex learning can take place. As in, foundation learning is necessary. Foundation learning here, it means without learning ABC, you are trying to learn how to write an essay in the exam. And the other strategy in rehearsal is evaluating when a rehearsal strategy is just right and when a different strategy is needed. For example, if you are preparing for a maths exam, it's not easy to remember all the sums descriptively. You have to do the sums, you have to see the question, then you have to do the sum. So there, evaluating which strategy you will use while reading a particular subject or giving any lecture. Coming to organizing information. How do we organize information? For example, a World Cup is going on, football World Cup. So how do they organize the information which they get from all the different countries or all the different entries to participate in this particular World Cup? So for this organizing information, the committee might use two things. One is outlining the material. So when the committee got the entries from all over the world, then it tries to outline the material as to which country or which football team has to be selected, and which that team has to be put in which group, and how all the information which they have got should be put in a particular place, and how each team is to be put in a different group based on a particular criteria. So based on that, the committee tries to outline the material, outline the information which it got from all the different countries. So there it's trying to sort it out step by step in a organized way. And the other one is making a concept map. Concept map is nothing but you prepare a map like you have a committee, then you have an organization, then you link that committee to various other committee which is in charge related to seating arrangement, or it could be any other thing. So there the committee or the person tries to prepare a cognitive map where he tries to put in all the information both visually and verbally. Then coming to elaborating information. How do we elaborate on the information? I'm sure many of you all must have had this experience of getting a question in the exam which you might have not known at all, and for that you try to write some vague answer for which you know only one word, and you try to elaborate on that. For instance, if you don't know anything about cow or how a cow looks like, then what do? If you just know a single line about cow, that it gives milk, how do you elaborate on that? You just know that only that particular sentence or particular information that cows gives milk, and no other information about the cow, whether how it looks like or what are the uses of cow. You don't know anything about it, but you just know particular information. So you try to think about it, and you come up with your own creative ways to write a short answer or an essay answer in your exam. So in the same way, how do we elaborate information? For example, there are two ladies talking, and this lady says, "That's about it. I've already told you twice as much as she told me." So it means she's already told her once, and the second time she just elaborated the whole thing again in a different way. And information can be elaborated in two ways. One is through creating summaries. How do we create summaries? Summaries can be done in the beginning or at middle, or it could be at the end. If it's at the beginning, a teacher might start saying that, asking about previous day's class, and then you summarize the whole thing what happened in the class, and in between maybe a teacher tries to give a lesson for half an hour and then tries to ask the students as to what important points are in that particular half an hour what she taught. Or it could be at the end, towards the end of the class, a teacher might give 5 or 10 minutes aside just to revise what she taught in the class. So there you create a summary by just focusing on the main points. And the other one is monitoring comprehension. Monitoring comprehension is done in two ways. One is through self-questioning, and the other one is through self-evaluation. When you have the information that you have to prepare for a particular lecture or for a particular exam, then you try to ask yourself, you ask questions about that particular information. In case if you forget whatever you have learned or whatever you have gone through the information, then you try to get more information from self-evaluating. Now moving on to meaningfulness. Whenever we learn any information, if it's meaningful, then we remember it for a very long time. And meaningfulness of the materials depends on three things. One is familiarity and frequency of usage. The other one is number of associations elicited within a fixed amount of time, and relations among the words in the list. For example, the word management is there. If you don't know what exactly the word management is, or if you have not come across the word management, then it's not easy to remember the word management. If a person gives you a jumbled word management, you might easily make a few words like nag, ENT, or it could be engagement instead of management, just because you didn't come across the word management. So familiarity is how acquainted are you with a particular word. Because you didn't know management and you are so acquainted with going to weddings and attending parties and engagements, you remember the word engagement instead of management. If you are more of a student who is doing business management, then it's more easy for you to remember the word management because it's more familiar to you, because you use it in every day-to-day life. The other one is number of associations. Number of associations means how many times you have come across with this particular term. For example, if you have gone to any weddings or attended engagements, more times you attended the wedding or more times you have attended the engagement, it's easy for you to remember that word engagement. Management, the more time you attend college, the number of times you have attended library, you have gone to library or attended lectures or seminars related to management, it's easy to remember. Now coming to short-term memory. What short-term memory is? Short-term memory is also known as primary or active memory. The duration of short-term memory is 20 to 30 seconds. And George Miller, the psychologist, he came up with a theory called 7 plus or 7 minus theory. Short-term memory, we have two things, it's memory span and chunking. And his theory states that a person can remember maximum of 7 plus or 7 minus items within 20 to 30 seconds span, and not more than that, because if a person remembers more than those items, then it will get stored in long term memory and not in short term memory. For instance, you wait at the bus stop and a person is standing next to you, and you look at the other person, and then you get your bus comes, and then you get onto the bus and you come to your college or you go to your office. Then after reaching your college or office, a person might ask, do you remember the person who was standing beside you at the bus stop? Do you remember that person? Maybe you might remember the face, though not clearly, but it could be very vague. So there the information is stored in the short term memory and not in long term. And the other one is chunking. Chunking refers to breaking down the information so that it retains for a very long time. For example, if a person asks you to remember a 10-digit number, or if you were to remember your friend's phone number, if she gives her phone number, a 10-digit number, she just says it to you once and she expects you to remember. Will you be able to do that? It's not possible, right? So it will take some time for you to remember that number. So what do you do for that? You break down the information. For example, if the number is 714-865-2189, there you break it down to 714-865-2189. So breaking down this 10-digit number, you are trying to remember. So in that way, after reading it thrice or after 4 or 5 times, you will be able to remember best friend's number easily after a point of time. Coming to the difference between short-term memory and working memory. Short-term memory refers to the temporary storage of information in the memory. As we have already seen, in short-term memory the duration is only 20 to 30 seconds. And working memory is another name for short-term memory. The working memory, the work it does is it temporarily stores, organizes and manipulates information. For instance, the example we have taken a couple of minutes back about a person standing at the bus stop and looking at the stranger standing beside this person. Here, when she reaches to the office and when a colleague asks her as to who was standing beside her at the bus stop, if she goes into little detail, there are chances that she might manipulate the information which she has seen. For instance, the person standing to her at the bus stop might be wearing a green color dress, but she might say, no, it's maybe it's pink, or maybe the bag which she is holding, it's a college bag. She might say it's a college bag, but instead that in reality that person might not be having a bag at all. So in working memory, though information is there, there's a chance of manipulating the information. So that's the main difference between short-term memory and working memory. And the terms are used interchangeably at times, short-term and working memory. Now coming to short-term and long-term memory. How is short-term memory different from long-term memory? In the 19th century, it was thought that short-term memory and long-term memory were together and not separate. They were not separate entities as such. But in 1950s, it came to know that an experiment was done on anterograde amnesia patients, and they found that those patients were unable to recall the information whatever happened after the accident or after the injury which occurred. So they had to learn information every day to remember certain items, certain things, or certain ways of doing a particular thing. So they had to remember each day. It was not like you remember it today and tomorrow it's there. So every day they had to remember the information, and it was found that then after doing the experiment, then they found that yes, there is a difference between short term and long term memory. If short term and long term memory existed together, then patients would have easily remembered the information, the events which happened or events which occurred right after the incident or even right after the brain injury also. So because of the injury, they were not able to recollect or retrieve the information after the injury. So it was clearly evident that there is a very marked distinction between short term and long term memory. Now coming to long term memory. What long term memory is? Long term memory, the duration is more than 30 seconds, because the more we rehearse information, the more meaningful the information is, the more it's better stored in the long term memory. And the key ingredient that facilitates long term storage is meaningfulness. As we have already seen what meaningfulness is, you try to remember the word if it's meaningful to you. If it's not meaningful, you don't remember it. So the more meaningful the word is, the more better it's stored in the long term memory. And primary strategy for transferring information from working memory into long term memory is referred to as encoding or elaboration. Encoding or elaboration means you try to expand on the information, as we have seen the example of a cow. You know the information just that it gives milk, but there you try to expand or elicit more information related to cow and you give it. So there, when you give more information, then there are better chances of remembering it. And there are two major problems related to the use of long term memory. Number one is transfer the information accurately to long term memory and to retrieve the information accurately. How these two can be problems? Because transferring the information, retrieving the information is good, but how can they be problem in long term memory? Because with the information which is stored in long term memory, if it's not accurate, it can be manipulated. So the information which is stored in the long term memory has to be accurate. If it's not accurate, it will be a problem, because the way we rehearse, the way it gets stored in the long term memory. For example, if I know the word butter, and the more I rehearse, if I turn butter into batter, the word is misinterpreted, and in long term memory it's stored as batter instead of butter. So instead of writing the correct word butter in the exam, I read batter in the exam, just because the way I rehearsed it makes a difference. So even retrieving the information accurately. So even while retrieving the information, if I don't retrieve it as butter, if I retrieve it as batter, then it will be a problem. So even for the information to be correctly stored, correctly retrieved, so these two things need to be taken into account. And there are three classifications of long term memory. It's divided into procedural memory, semantic memory, and episodic memory. So what do we mean by procedural memory? Procedural memory refers to the behaviors or the actions which we do. Procedural memory is automatic and it's unconscious. For example, if I know how to ride a bicycle during my childhood, it's easy for me to get onto a bicycle even when I grow up to be an adult. So because it's stored for a very long time, that I have been using bicycle from the childhood till adulthood, because I've been riding it every day to school, to college, or to any other place, I got habituated to it. So there, even though if I'm not conscious, if I get onto a bicycle, it's evident that I may start riding the bicycle. So that information related to all my behaviors is stored in procedural memory. Coming to semantic memory. Semantic memory refers to the information which we store related to the world around us. For instance, if I know that Delhi is the capital of India, it's easy for me to remember that with the meaning of the word Delhi is the capital of India. So this information is related to the world around me and not related to any other incident. It's not related to my personal life, it's related to the world around me. And now coming to episodic memory. Episode means a particular incident, or it refers to a group of incidents which occurred in a person's life. For example, if a person comes and asks you what's the best incident which you remember as a child, then you go back to your childhood and try to remember as a kid what was your best memory. So it's like going to that childhood, remembering that particular incident, that best incident of your childhood is known as episode, because you're remembering a particular incident, not all, though the whole information is not there, that particular incident you are remembering. So it's stored in the episodic memory because it's related to the incidents happen in a person's life. And semantic memory and episodic memory are both declarative and conscious. They are not unconscious, because they are consciously you try to play. When a person comes and asks me what is the best incident in your childhood, I don't unconsciously reply. I'm fully conscious as to what happened in my childhood, and I try to respond by being inconscious. Not like I faint and then I respond. It's like I'm fully present, fully alive, and then I respond. Now coming to organization of information in long-term memory. The various ways of organizing information in long-term memory are: advanced organizer. It refers to a teacher coming and explaining, before explaining the concept as to what social science is, she tries to bring in an incident where she tries to give an explanation about that, and then she starts what social science is all about. Coming to orienting question. Orienting question is nothing but asking a question about a particular topic as to what is social science, and then moving on to the topic. So that's orienting question, is to stimulate the mind of the student so that the person tries to think and answer what social science is instead of directly giving the answer. Then analogies are nothing related to the incidents which you try to similarly adapt to that. For example, they say if rose is to flower and then you give a dash, there the student tries to complete that by using whatever the blank is. And feedback loops are nothing but where you try to give an exam and then you try to forget to answer a particular question. There you try to go home, try to refer that particular question, and then you try to get an answer for that, and there you try to rectify that. So here you are trying to give a feedback to what you have missed. So that's known as feedback loop. Coming to associative addressing. Associative addressing refers to the information how we organize in the brain. There's retrieval cues in the brain where when we store the information, it goes to the brain, and there the cues respond by giving back the information. So there, by adapting all these 5 methods, we organize the information in long-term memory. Now coming to mnemonics. What are mnemonics? Mnemonics are nothing but memory aids, and the various aids or various memory aids in mnemonics are: first one is method of loci. Loci stands for a place or location in Greek, and it involves visualizing, moving through some familiar place and placing each item to be recalled as a specific place. For instance, if a person wants to remember the term wheel or a tire, then there are better chances of him going to a car garage or to a mechanic and then remembering the particular word wheel, than instead of the person going to the kitchen and remembering the word wheel. So the place is more important as to which place the person is trying to go and remember the word. The other one is peg word system. Peg word system refers to, it allows you to associate items with numbers, so that given the item you can recall its number, or vice versa. If you look at the example, it says you have pictures like bun, shoe, tree, door, hive, etc. So here it refers to 1 is equal to bun, 2 is equal to shoe, 3 is equal to tree, 4 is equals to door, and things like that. So you are associating number with a particular word or a particular item. So here you try to remember by associating number with the word 1, 1 bun. It's like 2, 2 shoes. It's like that. And coming to strategies in mnemonics, various strategies are acronyms, acrostics, and even rhyming. Acronyms refers to remembering a single word, wherein for each word you have a different meaning, but you make a word out of it and then you try to remember it. And keyword mnemonics It's aids to help students learn new vocabulary words. Actually, this keyword mnemonics was initially used for foreign students, thinking that it would be helpful for them to learn new information, because if they move on from one country to another country, then it would be difficult for them to learn new words. So if you look at this example, corpus callosum, here there are two words, corpus callosum. If a person wants to remember this word, he tries to associate the word corpus, takes the word pus as plus, callosum, sum as sum as in plus and sum as in from maths. Actually, it's corpus callosum, it's related to biology, but plus and sum are taken from maths. So you take those two terms from maths, you integrate it into science, and then you try to remember this word. So it's not only helpful for students, not only for foreign students, also Indian students. Effective learning strategies are nothing but intentionally using a certain approach to learn and remember something. It's called learning strategy. When you try to learn intentionally and you try to remember it, not like you don't want to remember or things like that. And under effective learning strategies, you have identifying important information, retrieving relevant prior knowledge, and taking notes. Identifying important information. How do we identify information? For example, if you have read any books, you see certain words highlighted in italics or in bold. There you see that certain text or certain word is highlighted because that particular word is meant to be important. The other one is retrieving relevant prior knowledge. For instance, if you look at it in this picture, a person is trying to put that pizza inside. If the person knows the recipe of the pizza and how to make pizza and how to put it in the oven, and if he forgets to remove that pizza from the oven, what happens? Obviously, you will get a burnt pizza towards the end. You won't eat that pizza. So here the person is trying to retrieve relevant prior knowledge. So here he knows what pizza is, how the pizza is made of, but if he doesn't know how to remove it from the oven, it becomes a problem. Same with your learning. When you learn, if you're not able to remember, if you're not able to recollect, then it creates a problem. And finally, taking notes. How well do we take notes while during the lecture? When the lecture is going on, the way you take notes also matters. I mean, because when you go home or when you, after finishing the class, when you read through the notes which you have prepared during the class, it might be very helpful while preparing for the exams.